The cake knife was still in my brother's hand when my father stood up and tapped his glass with a fork. I remember the frosting on the blade, pink and white, and the way the whole backyard went quiet for him, the way it always did. My nephew had just turned 1. There were balloons tied to the fence, a banner sagging over the patio, 30-some relatives holding paper plates. My father reached into the bag under his chair and pulled out a navy blue folder, the kind they hand you at a title office, and he held it up over his head like a trophy. "We signed the house over," he said. "It's yours now, son, a family home for your family." My mother was already crying. Everyone cheered. My brother hugged them both, and my sister-in-law covered her mouth with both hands, and somewhere behind me an aunt said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. I stood by the cooler with a juice box in my hand, because that's what I'd been doing, passing out juice boxes, and I did the math without meaning to. 72 payments, 6 years of property taxes, homeowners insurance, and the medical bills that came after my dad's stroke, all of it out of my account, every month, quiet as breathing. Nobody looked at me. Not one person in that backyard turned around. And standing there with a melting Capri Sun in my fist, I felt something in my chest go very still and very cold, and I knew it wasn't going to warm back up. People always ask the same question when I tell this story, so let me answer it now, up front, because I asked it myself for a long time afterward. Why did I keep paying? 6 years. Why didn't I stop the first time I saw how things really were? Because of a text message. 6 years ago, my dad had a stroke in the parking lot of the hardware store where he'd worked for 26 years. He survived it. Thank God he survived it. But the right side of his body never fully came back, and neither did his job. My mom was a school cafeteria worker. Her income could cover groceries and the light bill and not much else. Within 3 months, they were behind on the property taxes, the insurance lapsed, and the hospital was sending envelopes with red lettering on them. I was 26. I sat at my kitchen table one night with my laptop open and their numbers spread out in front of me, and I set up the transfers. Taxes into an escrow account I opened myself, insurance on auto pay, a payment plan with the hospital that came out of my checking on the 15th of every month. I never announced it. That's not how I was raised to be. I was raised to be the one who handled things, but my mom knew. And about a year in, after I'd covered a roof repair on top of everything else, she sent me a text I still have. I screenshotted it actually, which tells you something about me even then. Some part of me knew I'd need proof someday that it was ever said. "You're saving this house, sweetheart. Don't think we don't know it. This house will belong to both of you kids someday. We will never forget what you're doing. Both of you kids, someday." I read that message in the parking garage at work and I cried, just for a minute with my forehead on the steering wheel. Not because of the money, because somebody had finally said it out loud. So when people ask why I kept paying, that's why. I wasn't being a doormat. I was making mortgage payments on a promise. I thought I was investing in something. I just didn't know the deed to that something already had one name penciled in, and it wasn't mine. I should back up because none of this started with the stroke. The stroke just put a price tag on a pattern that had been running my whole life. When I graduated college, first one in the family, by the way, paid for with loans and a campus job scanning IDs at the rec center, my parents took me to a chain steakhouse and gave me a card. Inside the card was a $100 bill and a note in my mom's handwriting that said they were proud of me. And honestly, I was happy. I framed the note. I'm not being sarcastic. I genuinely framed it because I'd learned early that in our family, my portion came in small packages, and you said thank you for small packages. 3 years later, my brother graduated, barely after 5.5 years and 2 changed majors, and my parents threw a party in the backyard with a rented margarita machine and a taco truck parked in the driveway. An actual taco truck, and at the end of the night, my dad whistled for everyone's attention and tossed my brother a set of keys, and out front sat a used pickup with a bow on the hood. People screamed. My brother did a lap around the truck high-fiving people. I stood there clapping with the rest of them, smiling so hard my face hurt, doing what I always did, which was telling myself it didn't mean what it obviously meant. That was the shape of everything. He was the fun one, the charming one, the one who walked into a room and made my parents' faces light up. I was the reliable one. My mom used to brag to her sisters that I never needed anything, and she said it like a compliment, and it took me until my 30s to hear what it actually was, a job description. He needed, I provided. He stumbled, I steadied. When he totaled the truck 2 years later, my parents helped him buy another one. When he quit his job to start a vending machine business, they loaned him $8,000 they never saw again. When the vending machines failed, there was a crypto phase, and after the crypto phase, there was a smoked meat trailer that lasted 1 summer. Every time, money appeared from my parents to cushion the landing, and every 15th of the month, my transfer went out to make sure the house those cushions came from didn't get sold out from under them. You want to know where their money went? The money that should have gone to their own taxes and their own bills? It went to him. It went into vending machines sitting in a storage unit and a food trailer rusting behind a buddy's barn. I was the floor. He was the hole in it. I want to be fair because he's still my brother and his son is a sweet little boy who has no part in any of this. My brother never asked me to be invisible. He just never once, in 30 years, wondered why I was. My husband saw it before I did. We'd been married 2 years when the stroke happened, and he never fought me on the payments. Not once. He just asked me, every so often, in that careful voice he uses when he's holding something heavy, whether my parents had ever put any of it in writing. I'd show him the text. Both of you kids. Someday. He'd nod and let it go. He told me later that he'd kept his own copy of that screenshot in a folder on his phone because he had a feeling someday I'd need it and wouldn't be able to bear looking for it myself. That's the kind of man I married. Remember him because he matters later. So, the birthday party, the navy blue folder over my father's head, the cheering. I didn't make a scene. I want that on the record. I have never once made a scene in my life, which is maybe the whole problem. I waited 20 minutes, told my sister-in-law the cake was beautiful, kissed my nephew on the head, and told my mom I had a headache. She barely turned around. She was watching my brother show the folder to his father-in-law, glowing like a porch light. My husband drove us home with his hand resting palm up on the console the whole way, in case I wanted it. I didn't take it. I just watched the streetlights go by and felt that cold, still thing in my chest settle in like it was unpacking. That night I didn't cry. I sat at the kitchen counter and ate cereal at 10 p.m. like a college kid, and I said one sentence out loud to my husband. They're going to need something from me within 3 months. He said, I know. We were both wrong, by the way. It took 2. The dinner invitation came by text from my mom, all sunshine and exclamation points. Family dinner Sunday, your brother's house, just us. I noticed she said your brother's house like it had always been called that. Like the place I'd kept off the auction block for 6 years had been rebranded overnight. I almost said no. I wish I could tell you I almost said no for healthy reasons, but the truth is I went because some pathetic, hopeful animal in me thought, maybe this is when they explain, maybe there's a plan, maybe someday, and both of you still mean something, and tonight they say it in front of everyone. The porch light was on when we pulled up. Through the front window I could see my mom in the kitchen, their old kitchen, his kitchen now, pulling a pan of lasagna out of the oven with the oven mitts I'd given her for Christmas. My sister-in-law had already repainted the entryway a greige color and hung one of those wooden signs that says, Gother. My dad clapped my husband on the shoulder at the door, big smile, and then he smiled at me too. And it was the smile he gives the mailman. Friendly. Generic. A smile with no memory in it. Dinner was fine. That's the eerie part. Dinner was completely fine. Lasagna, garlic bread, my nephew smearing red sauce on his high chair tray, my brother talking about putting a deck on the back. I remember my mom watching him talk with her chin in her hand, soft-eyed, the way you'd watch the ocean. Nobody mentioned the folder. Nobody mentioned the 15th of the month. It was like sitting inside a play where everyone had the script but me. Then the plates got cleared, and my mom folded her napkin into a little square, and she glanced at my dad, and my stomach dropped before a word was said, because I know that glance. That glance has preceded every bill of my adult life. Honey, she said to me, your father and I have been talking about our next chapter. Next chapter, she actually said next chapter. Now that the house is your brother's, And they need the room with the baby. We've been thinking about where we'll land. We don't want anything big, just somewhere quiet." She smiled, and the smile was already relieved, already grateful, like the thing she was about to say had been agreed to weeks ago by everyone who mattered. "So we've decided we're going to move into the lake cottage. We can be out there by the 1st of the month." The lake cottage, my grandmother's cottage. My grandma Lucille, my dad's mother, who taught me to play gin rummy and never once in her life called me low maintenance, left that cottage to me when she passed 4 years ago. To me, by name, in a will, because, and she told me this in the hospital, holding my hand with her papery one, "You're the only one who ever showed up without being asked." I'd spent 4 years and most of my savings fixing it up. New well pump, new dock boards. I'd sanded those dock boards myself over a 4th of July weekend, while my husband held the cooler of drinks and the sunscreen. It was the one thing on this earth that was entirely, legally, spiritually mine. And my mother had just informed me, not asked me, informed me that she'd be moving into it by the 1st of the month. Nobody at the table breathed. My brother studied his plate like it had instructions on it. My sister-in-law got very busy wiping the baby's face. My husband went still beside me, and I felt his knee press against mine under the table, one steady pound of pressure, like a hand on a shoulder. I set my fork down. I lined it up with the edge of my plate, which is the thing I do when my hands need a job. And the strange thing, the thing I didn't expect after 31 years, is that I wasn't shocked. There was no lightning bolt. There was just recognition. Quiet and almost gentle. Like finally finding the source of a noise that's been keeping you up for years. They had already decided where I fit. They had decided it decades ago. I was not a daughter who got things. I was a daughter things came from. "No," I said. Just that. One syllable. It came out of me calm and level, and it landed on that table like a dropped dish. My mother blinked. "What?" "No. You're not moving into the cottage." "Sweetheart." She laughed one small, confused laugh and looked at my dad for backup. "We're not asking for the moon. It's sitting empty most of the year." "It's not sitting empty," I said. "It's mine. Grandma left it to me, and the answer is no." My dad's face did something then that I'd only ever seen pointed at other people. The jaw set, the eyes flattened. "After everything this family has done for you," he said, slow, like he was teaching me a word. And I almost laughed. I almost asked him to name one thing, one since the $100 bill in the graduation card. But there's no point arguing arithmetic with people who've spent 30 years grading on a curve. I stood up. My chair scraped. I thanked my sister-in-law for dinner, because manners are a disease I'll die with. And I walked out the front door of the house I had paid to keep, past the Gother sign, into the cold. My husband caught up with me at the car. He didn't say anything until we were 3 blocks gone, and then all he said was, "Locksmith? Tomorrow?" And I said, "First thing," and that was our whole conversation. 16 years from now, if you ask me to define marriage, I'll tell you about that drive. Here's what I did, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, because this is the part where I stopped being a daughter for a while and became an administrator. And the administrator does not skip steps. That night before bed, my phone started buzzing. Mom, Mom, Dad, Mom, Brother, Mom. By 11, there were 31 missed calls and a string of texts that started wounded and went to furious. "We raised you. This is what we get. Your grandmother would be ashamed." That last one almost funny, considering. I read them all once, standing at the kitchen counter. Then I took screenshots of everything, the whole thread, all the way back to the someday text from 5 years ago, and I emailed the screenshots to myself and to my husband. Then, and only then, I blocked the numbers. People think blocking is rage. It isn't. It's tourniquet. Every cycle with my parents ran the same loop: demand, refusal, punishment, charm, amnesia, and the only way out of a loop is to cut the wire it runs on. Saturday morning, 8 a.m., my husband and I drove out to the lake and met the locksmith in the gravel driveway. New deadbolts, front and back. Every old key, and here's the part I want you to hear clearly. Every old key died that morning. The emergency key I'd given my parents 3 summers ago, the one in my mom's junk drawer, became a souvenir. It would fit nothing on this earth anymore. Then we went one further. Smart lock on the front door, keypad on the back, 2 cameras under the eaves, one watching the porch, one watching the driveway, and a door sensor that pushes an alert to my phone and my husband's phone the second anything opens, with no delay, because I pay for the plan with no delay. I sat on the dock with my coffee while my husband tested it, opening the front door over and over, and I watched my phone light up every single time. Front door opened, front door opened, front door opened. I have never found a sound more soothing than that little chime. Sunday I did paperwork. I pulled 6 years of bank statements and built a folder. Every tax payment, every insurance premium, every hospital installment, 72 screenshots of transfer complete, plus the text. The promise. Both of you kids, someday. I wasn't building a lawsuit. I want to be honest about that. I never intended to sue my parents, and I never did. I built that folder for an audience of one, me, because I knew what was coming. The phone calls to aunts, the holiday revisionism, the version of this story where I'm the cold one who abandoned 2 sick old people over a cabin. I knew that within a year, even I might start to wonder if I'd imagined the whole arrangement. The folder was so I could never be gaslit by my own family or by my own soft heart. I zipped it, named it boring on purpose, taxes, archive, and saved it 3 places. Then I closed the laptop and my husband made grilled cheese and we watched a cooking competition until midnight and I slept 9 hours for the first time in 2 months. For 11 days, nothing happened. I went to work. I'm a project coordinator for a commercial construction firm, which means my whole job is anticipating exactly how things fall apart, and I will tell you those were the most focused 11 days of my career. Word filtered through the family grapevine that I'd lost my mind. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in 2 years texted me a single praying hands emoji. I muted the cousins' group chat. The quiet didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like the inside of a house after the locks are changed. The same rooms, but yours now. Day 12 was a Wednesday. I was in a 9 a.m. scheduling meeting, phone face down on the table when it buzzed, then buzzed again, then started buzzing in a pattern I'd only heard once before, during the test on the dock. Backdoor, keypad tamper, driveway camera motion, front porch camera motion. I stepped into the hallway and opened the camera feed with a thumb that was steadier than it had any right to be, and there they were, in full color, time-stamped, 11 minutes from town. My parents' tan sedan in my gravel driveway with the trunk open and 2 suitcases sitting in the dirt. My mother on the porch in her good coat. My father standing next to a man in a gray work shirt, a locksmith. They had called a locksmith. I watched my dad gesture at the front door, watched him produce, I kid you not, a piece of mail, holding it up to the man like an ID. The microphone on the porch camera is decent. I heard my father say, clear as anything, it's our daughter's place. We have permission. We just got locked out. We have permission. I want to tell you my hand shook, that my heart broke, that I stood in that hallway falling apart. The truth is uglier and simpler. I felt nothing but a kind of grim clarity, like the last number of a combination clicking over. They hadn't called me. They hadn't apologized, negotiated, asked. They'd waited 11 days for me to cool off and then driven out to take it, because in 50-some years of life, no one had ever told them no and made it stick. I did 3 things in 2 minutes. I hit the 2-way audio on the porch camera and said, in my calmest scheduling meeting voice, this is the homeowner. You do not have permission to be on this property, and I have not authorized any lock work. Sir, I'd stopped drilling. The locksmith, bless that man, stepped back from my door so fast he nearly fell off the porch. My mother's face, looking around for where my voice was coming from, is an image I will take to my grave. Second, I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line, gave the address, and said 2 people were attempting to enter my property without permission and had hired a locksmith under false pretenses. Third, I texted my husband 3 words, they're at Lucille's, and by the time I got to the parking garage, he was already pulling up at the curb. The drive out was 40 minutes of gray sky and bare trees. I kept my hands folded in my lap and watched the camera feed in little glances. The locksmith's van left within 5 minutes. My parents did not. They sat down on my porch steps next to their suitcases and waited, and I understood that too. They weren't waiting for the police. They were waiting for me. They were that sure that the sight of them, old and luggage-stranded and cold, would fold me in half the way it always had. The sheriff's deputy was already there when we turned onto the gravel, his cruiser parked at an angle, lights off, patient as furniture. My mother stood up the second she saw our car, and her face. I need you to understand her face. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even worry. It was relief. Pure relief. The relief of a woman whose problem has just arrived to solve itself. "Oh, thank God," she said, coming down the steps. "Honey, tell him. Tell him it's fine. There's been a misunderstanding." The deputy looked at me. "Ma'am, are these your parents?" "They are," I said, "and they do not have permission to be here. They've never had permission to be here. The locks were changed 12 days ago for exactly this reason." The relief slid off my mother's face like the temperature dropping. "You can't be serious. We're your parents. We had a key." "You had a key to locks that don't exist anymore," I said. "The key you had was for emergencies. This isn't an emergency. This is you moving in after I said no." My father came down the steps then, brushing off his coat, going for wounded dignity. "We didn't break anything. We were going to have a key made, to our daughter's house. Since when is that a crime?" The deputy, very evenly, said it could in fact be several crimes and asked me the question I'd known was coming the whole drive out. Did I want to press charges? The word charges did something to my mother. She made a sound I'd never heard from her, a little airless gasp, and she said, "You wouldn't." And for one long second, everything went very quiet. The wind in the bare trees, the gravel under everyone's feet, the lake flat and pewter-colored behind the house my grandmother left me. I looked at my mother. I really looked at her, maybe for the first time since I was a kid, at the certainty she wore like a winter coat, the certainty that I would bend, because bending was my function, because somewhere in her bones she truly believed that what I owned was communal, and what I felt was negotiable, and what I gave was simply the family's weather. "No one thanks the rain." "No," I said to the deputy, "I'm not pressing charges." My mother exhaled. "But they're leaving now. They're not coming back, and if it happens again, I will." The relief on her face curdled into something else, and there it was, the fury, right on schedule, the punishment phase of the loop arriving like a train. "You are unbelievable," she hissed. "After everything we have done for you. Everything. You put your own mother in handcuffs over a cabin. You put your own daughter through 6 years of bills over a thank you never said," I said, and my voice didn't rise, and that, I think, is what finally scared her. 72 payments, Mom. I have every receipt. I have your text. Both of you kids, someday. You want to talk about everything? I'll send you the folder. She didn't answer. She looked at my husband. Last resort, the son-in-law, surely the reasonable one, and my husband stepped up beside me, not in front of me, beside me, and said nothing at all, which said everything. The deputy offered to drive them to the gas station in town where they could call someone for a ride. I watched my father load the suitcases into a stranger's cruiser. I watched my mother get in the back seat of a police car in her good coat, staring straight ahead, refusing to look at me, and I waited to feel like a monster. I'm telling you the truth when I say it never came. What came instead, as the cruiser crunched down the gravel and out of sight, was quiet. Enormous, structural quiet, like a generator shutting off that had been running so long you'd stopped hearing it. I walked up my porch steps past the half-drilled deadbolt the locksmith had abandoned. I paid a different locksmith to fix it that afternoon, and yes, I kept that receipt too, and I let myself into my grandmother's cottage with my own code, and I stood in the front room where she taught me gin rummy, and I said out loud to nobody, "Sorry about the noise, Grandma." Then I sat on the dock with my husband until the sun went down, and we didn't talk. And the lake did that thing it does at dusk, where it holds the last of the light, a few minutes longer than the sky. The fallout came in waves, and I'll give it to you fast, because the fallout was never the point. There were 47 missed calls over the next week. Aunts, uncles, 2 cousins, 1 number from my mother's church. I didn't block them all. I just let them ring into a phone that had stopped being an emergency line. My brother texted exactly once. That was messed up. They're old. I wrote back, so was Grandma. She managed to not steal anything. He didn't reply. I hear his wife made him stay out of it after that, and honestly, I've gained a strange respect for that woman. Then, about 3 weeks in, my cousin called, the one decent one, the one who shows up to things, and she gave it to me straight because she knows I don't like garnish. My parents, suitcases and all, had gone from the gas station back to their old house. My brother's house, the house with the Gother sign, and my sister-in-law, standing in the doorway of the home my parents had handed them with a bow on it, told them they couldn't stay. Not wouldn't, couldn't. The baby, the space, the stress. 2 weeks, she said, tops, and then apparently even that turned into a fight, and inside of a month my parents were renting a 1-bedroom apartment over a dry cleaner's on the east side, and my 61-year-old mother went back to work full-time in a school cafeteria to make the rent. I sat with that for a long time after I hung up. People assume that part felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like watching someone get rained on after they sold your umbrella. There's no joy in it, but you'd be lying if you called it injustice. The last domino fell 4 months later, and I found out from a real estate app of all things, because the algorithm knows my old zip code. My childhood home, the house I kept alive for 6 years, listed for sale. My brother had discovered what I could have told him for free. A paid-off house still eats. Property taxes, insurance, a roof, a furnace, a water heater with opinions. The vending machine money was gone. The parents' well was dry. He'd drained it himself, bucket by bucket, for a decade. And so the family home, the legacy, the it'll be yours someday, went on the market with grage walls and staged furniture 14 months after my father held that folder over his head to applause. I heard my mother cried for a week. I heard she said she felt betrayed. I've decided to let her have that word back. I wasn't using it anymore. My mother left me a voicemail a while after the listing went up. I haven't blocked her number again. I let it ring through these days, the way you'd leave a porch light on without sitting up waiting. In the voicemail, her voice is smaller than I've ever heard it. She says they made mistakes. She says she'd like to talk. She says she hopes someday I can forgive them. I haven't deleted it. I haven't listened to it again either. It lives on my phone the way the folder lives on my laptop. Not a weapon, not a wound, just a record. Some apologies need to sit in the driveway a long while before you let them in, and some never get out of the car. I genuinely don't know yet which kind this is. I'm allowed not to know. The cottage is still mine. We spent Memorial Day out there, my husband, my cousin and her kids, burgers on the grill, somebody's dog in the lake. I taught her oldest to play gin rummy on the dock and lost on purpose twice, and then beat him fair because Grandma Lucille would have said losing on purpose 3 times is just lying. At dusk, my phone chimed in my pocket. Front door opened. It was my husband, going in for more ice. I looked at the alert and I smiled and I put the phone away. Here's what I know now that I didn't know standing at that cooler with a juice box going warm in my hand. Being the reliable one is not a personality. It's a role, and roles are assigned, and the people who assign them are betting their whole lives that you'll never read the fine print. Saying no to my parents did not break my family. My family was already broken. I was just the load-bearing wall painted to match everything else, and the day I stopped holding the roof up, everyone finally got to see what the structure really was. A boundary isn't revenge. It's just the truth with a lock on it. I paid for 6 years to keep a house standing for people who never once asked what it was costing me, and the cruelest part is that I'd have kept paying forever for one honest thank you. They could have had me for the price of gratitude. They chose the price of everything instead. The light goes off the lake, slow out there in the summer. I sat on those dock boards I sanded myself, in front of the house my grandmother trusted me with, next to the man who kept the screenshot, and I felt the quiet settle over all of it, like the first cool hour after a long fever. Not empty. Mine. If your family handed everything to the golden child and kept the invoice running on you, what would you have done? Because I know what I did, and I sleep just fine. I keep coming back to that juice box going warm in my hand, because that's where the whole thing was decided. even though it took me 2 more months to know it. Nothing in my story happened by accident. Every result had a receipt. My parents spent 30 years teaching my brother Dustin that consequences were someone else's job, so when the taxes came due on his free house, of course he sold it. They spent those same 30 years teaching me that love was something you earned by invoice, so of course I kept paying, 72 times, until the day the math finally broke me open. You harvest what you plant. That's not religion talking, that's just how a ledger works, and families keep ledgers whether they admit it or not. What saved me wasn't anger. I want to be honest about that, because anger is loud and useless, and I had plenty of it. What saved me was 3 quiet things I didn't know I'd been building. The first was knowing right from wrong, even when wrong was wearing my mother's good coat. Refusing them felt cruel for about a week, until I understood that letting people take from you isn't kindness. It's just helping them become worse people on your dime. Real decency sometimes looks cold from the outside. It held the line anyway. The second was using my head when my heart was screaming. The screenshots, the folder, the locks, the cameras. None of that was revenge. That was judgment, the boring kind, the kind that knows a promise without paper is just weather. Grandma Lucille had that judgment. Sheep didn't leave the cottage to the family. She left it to a name in writing because she'd watched this family long enough to know exactly what someday was worth. And the third was simply not quitting on myself. It takes a strange kind of endurance to stand in your own driveway while your mother calls you unbelievable and not fold. 6 years of paying their bills taught me discipline by accident. 12 days of silence after I said no taught me it on purpose. Grit isn't dramatic, mostly it's just letting the phone buzz and not picking it up. Here's what I'd tell anyone still holding their family's roof up alone. Check your ledger honestly, even if the answer hurts. Put your generosity in writing or put it away, and understand that the people who punish your first no were never paying for your yes, you were. My parents didn't end up in that one bedroom over the dry cleaners because I was heartless. They ended up there because every choice carries its own luggage, and they'd been packing those suitcases for decades. I just finally stopped carrying them. The lake holds the light a little longer than the sky out there. I earned the right to sit and watch it. So did you, wherever your dock is. Guard it with a clear conscience, a clear head, and a spine that's done apologizing.